Oh, Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us together this evening. Open up our hearts and our minds to Thee. May we hear Thy word. May we each be together in Thy mind, receptive and peaceful and quiet this evening to hear Thy word. In the name of Jesus Christ, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. And I will go on mute, unless you all want to listen to German.
No, thanks, Margot. So in this video, we're going to talk about integrating the shadow, or in other words, how to deal with the evil part of you. Sounds ominous, right? So we'll also discuss the process of integration and how that actually works. And even though these are, relatively new ideas in the world of psychology, Jesus understood these things very well, of course. And we're going to see how he recommends that we handle it. So if you're new to this series of videos, we take the more difficult passages from the teachings of Jesus, what I like to call the WTF parts of the Bible. And we look at them through the eyes of a mystic. And just so you know, we don't regard being a mystic as something exotic or difficult to do. In fact, everyone has an inner mystic. It just needs to be exercised and developed. So stick with us as we explore this difficult concept of not resisting evil. I promise you that we'll find ways to make this work in your life. So our normal tendency when we face the evil within ourselves is to try to change it. This is the beginning of sorrows, because the more we try to change it, the stronger it gets. And I'm sure everyone here has discovered that, right? On your own. This isn't
yeah.
something you don't like about you. Maybe it's it's a character flaw what's something you regard as a character flaw or an addiction, maybe. And the more you try to get rid of it, it just gets worse and worse. Or is that just me?
Just you, Michael.
Okay. Well, then we'll just talk about me.
Oh, okay.
So,
Oh, yeah.
so
No,
Every day.
I know what you mean. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. Anyone want to share anything about that, or?
Well, you guys that knew me in the order, I was always the one that fell asleep at the most inopportune times, and the more I tried to fight it, the worse it got. And it really didn't ease up until after I had my kids, and I just didn't worry about it anymore. And I still have problems with it, but it wasn't nearly as bad. And now I just deal with it day by day. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But fighting it as much as I did, it just got worse. Just got worse.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it feels like just lowering your expectations, right? Instead of trying to.
Oh yeah, because until that happened, up to the age of 14, I was a star performer in everything. And then all of a sudden I couldn't function at all. And then nobody could figure out why. And every day, every hour was a battle. And so, yeah, I don't envy those days at all. But there came a point where I finally, it was more or less in a dream where I resisted something, but I didn't fight against it. And all of a sudden it just went away.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
And,
I will
yeah.
add, that's amazing, because Linda, I remember you at 9-10 falling asleep.
Oh God.
Now I relate to who you are. I lived for almost a year. And you had such difficulty with that. You would just sit in the middle of a class, and 2 minutes into the class, you were out cold. And this,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and everybody tried to
Yeah.
keep you going. It was, it was kind of a joint effort, but that's amazing. So you overcame that. I'm very impressed.
Well, to a certain degree, when I had my breast cancer, they found out I had thyroid cancer at the same time. So when they took my thyroid out, like all those symptoms went away,
Yeah.
and
Huh.
I could actually drive for 2 to 3 hours at a time for the first time in my life, and
Wow.
safely. Yeah. So. As I'm getting older, I may not drive, forever, but I'm sure enjoying it now.
That's great. So they
yeah.
figured out it was something physical, huh?
Yeah.
Hmm.
But they thought it might be a low active thyroid at the time, but the medication didn't help. And being a narcoleptic, they wanted to put me on Ritalin, which made it 100 times worse. I was either buzzing or I was really flat out. And I said, you can take this stuff and keep it. And, but it was my channel of learning the lessons that I have. And so it's kind of an embarrassment with my kids, and they laugh about it and joke about it, and, and have fun with it. And people say, oh, no, that didn't happen. I said, oh, yes, it did. But yeah. That was me.
That's
I actually had that
great.
problem.
Reconnected. That's wonderful. Yeah. No, you had a really rough go, and you were so sincere and really wanted this to be awake, and really wanted to be there and present. And
I did.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember that. Good heart. Really enjoyed your company in those days.
I actually had that
I
problem
loved your
myself for a while.
as well.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. It was in a difficult situation where it required a lot of internal change on my part. And it felt like my circuit breakers would blow. It'd be too much to deal with all at once. And no matter what I did, I couldn't keep from nodding off. And even even with my eyes open sometimes. But it made me realize that that it's not an uncommon problem. It's just that most people don't literally fall asleep, but they will check out as you're talking with them. They it's kind of like a miniature sleep,
Yeah.
Is there just something about what
Because
you're
a lot
saying?
of times I would hear things going on and not realize that I was actually asleep, because I could hear everything that was going on.
Yeah.
Wow.
And but I could never remember anything after that. What was being taught. It would have been nice. I might have learned something then. But yeah, I would hear the people. It was like I knew they were there. But
It sounds like it was really more of a physical problem with you, though, Linda. Right? That's
there
after
were
the
times
surgery.
that it was interesting. It was interesting because there would be times when I would sit down and I'll go to sleep, and then what I would experience on the other side, it was like I had to be there to help somebody else do something at that time, even though it was only for a minute. And then I come back and I helped somebody, but I had fallen asleep on this side. So you go back and forth. There was very involved. I never knew what to expect. Let's put it that way, and I never knew how to deal with it. Every moment was different from the next.
Wow.
Yeah.
So.
Well, sometimes this happens when somebody will trigger something inside of us, a reaction of some kind, maybe anger, and we're not comfortable with it, so instead of expressing the anger, we'll check out.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
or maybe sadness, you know, something, you know, it might trigger a real deep, profound sadness in you, you know, from something in your past, and that can cause you to check out as well.
People also check out from fear, which then they resolve by getting angry. But
Yes.
fear and not having a very strong opinion of themselves, self-esteem. So they sit in the corner, they play second, and they just don't participate that much. They want to be liked so much, so they don't do anything at all.
Mm.
Right, right.
So
No,
that's
it
Yeah,
appears
been there,
like that.
done
a really
that.
strong motivator that I've found working with people. And once they realize that you can make lots of mistakes and we still like you, it helps.
It helps.
Please
Yeah.
fall on your face, get it over with, and now
Do
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I heard.
think partially,
Oh.
you know, I realized, you know, that I had the precious husband that loved me despite the fact that I was, you know, fell asleep and as easily as I did. He rolled with it. I don't know how he put up with it. I really don't, but he did, and he never condemned me for it, and that, you know, helped me drop the low esteem in a lot of ways.
you were also really sweet. I mean, you were really kind and sweet. Living with you, you know, in our conditions at 910, that was insane. Yeah.
910
You had
was
one
insane.
bedroom, one huge bathroom and one shower. And we would get in there at one end and come out the other, 2 or 3 at a time in the morning. It was just
Oh, yeah. You know, nobody believes the 2 or 3 minute showers we used to take, and yet we did it all the time. You know,
we just did it all. Nobody thought about anything. And just an amazing adventure. And you were
yes, it was.
up for it, and very positive spirit. So, you know, that got you through. That's great. Yeah, that was difficult.
Well, I appreciate the input because there are times I wondered about myself. That's for sure.
That's why you're here
But-
tonight.
You know, whenever we
Yeah,
have
I mean,
something. I'm sorry, go ahead, Linda.
we had, you know, I had all the amazing people back there and helping me out too, so that made it possible too.
Yeah.
So whenever we have something going on like that, there's obviously something we haven't dealt with. There's something going on, and checking out, you know, falling asleep or going into anger or any of the avoidance and addictions, because addictions are another way of checking out. And so it comes down to having to deal with those things directly. And the first way we deal with it is not to avoid it, that we really have to come face to face with it and allow whatever that feeling is we have to be present with it. We have to allow it. And that can take some work. It's not like a one-time thing, or it can be a one-time thing if you really do it, if you really make that connection. But, you know, in our other classes talking about love is connection. And so what we're talking about here really is loving that part of yourself. And the way we love that part of ourselves is to touch it. And touching and seeing are the same thing on the spiritual plane. So if we allow something, we allow something to come into our awareness, that's seeing it. And the very act of seeing is the act of touching it. And when we touch it, that makes a connection. And that connection is just like in an electrical circuit. When you make that connection, there's a movement of power. And in this case, it's a discharge. That built up energy in that thing that's bothering you on the inside, it gets released, and then it loses its sway over you. but you have to confront it. You have to, and confront, maybe that's not the right word because it's like an adversarial term, but it's more of a loving, allow it to be in your presence and you be in its presence, and really see what it is, you know, allow yourself to feel it.
That's it. You have to feel it.
Yeah, and this is
And
what
how
Jesus
do
is.
you, how do you recognize or identify that it?
Good question. So the way we recognize it is when we react to something, especially if we react in a way that surprises other people. You know what I mean? It might not surprise you because you're so used to doing it. So sometimes the best way you can tell is to ask the person who really knows you. And they'll tell you like right now. It's like with you, Linda, right? When you asked your coworker if you were like the person who was irritating you, remember that?
Yeah.
And they said, "Yep, you're just like her."
Yep.
And once
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
looked at it, then that made all the difference. You
Yeah,
were-
it really did, because in the end, I ended up being her only friend.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So that was like an outward demonstration of you making friends with yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
I, th-
yeah.
I think what Patrick brought up that was important is recognizing when you see someone who has an addiction and they go, yeah, I have an addiction, but they don't really recognize where they are. They just, it's a recognizing that. Also, do they want to get rid of it? Because some people who have addictions don't. They just want to go that way and die. There's
Yeah, they know they're addicted, and they'll admit their addictions are there, but they don't search any further as to why they are there.
yeah. And so in putting that and not dealing with it, even though they've recognized it, they just bring down everyone around them because
Yeah.
of behavior. So, I mean, that's a negative addiction as opposed to being, well, there's the addiction of the workaholic who then wonders why his wife isn't talking to him anymore, or his kids have abandoned him. You know, it's like, but I put food on the table and I paid for everything and da 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 da, and aren't you all thankful? And they go, who are you?
Yeah, yeah.
Where were you? When were you not there or there? And that's an addiction. That is an addiction. Sorry to say.
Yeah.
It's sit in
My
front of
youngest daughter has a
this
youngest
is a
daughter
major
has that.
addiction.
Yes.
I've sat at dinner in a restaurant and watched a family of 5, which is 3 small children, and they'll plunk one of these things down in front of their kids so that they can talk.
Oh,
Parents.
or worse than that, all 5 of them are on their
On their
screens.
phones, yeah.
They're at dinner. The
You know,
first
that's
time that
wrong.
day, they've all been together, and they're all on their phones.
So they're not together.
Even
They
the
don't get to know
kids.
each other at
Yeah.
all.
At all.
You know, they need to go camping, but not where there's
It's
big.
real bad now.
Yeah, no cell service. Right.
Yeah, so
It's
that's an addiction, and it's set up that way. You do realize that when you go down like this,
Mm.
there are scientific studies based on that. They use them in casinos to get people addicted to gambling. They're not gambling. There's something that goes on in your brain, and it's biologically, it goes into some kind of system. And having read it, I don't know all the terms, but they picked up on it, and now we've got to carry that around with us. And you just tune everything out and people out.
Yeah.
So you don't create communication skills, social skills.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The social
I've
skills
gotta-
are families used to get together. Well, it wasn't just families. You'd have the neighbor across the street over on a regular basis. You know, that's why we have porches out in front of our house. All these little, what I call cookie cutter houses, they all have porches. So you could sit out on the street and chit chat with your neighbors as they went by.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't, when anybody moves into our neighborhood that's new, we have them over. We invite them over. We have dinners, we have lunches a few times. We rarely get invited back. We have them with their kids. It happens. We just always do it because that's irrelevant. You know, now the door's open if they want to be friends. But that's a social connection on a one-to-one that is lost with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talk about addictions and other kinds of addictions. If you can't communicate,
Yeah, let's take this and use it, you know, in our to our benefit, because having that kind of an addiction, if you're aware of it, when you are prompted to pick up the phone or get a drink or watch TV or in any other way, you know that you're checking out. That's a really good time, and Patrick, in addressing your question, that's a really good time to look to see what triggered that. What happened right before you felt that way? What made you move in that direction? And so that's a really good opportunity to figure out just what it is in you that needs to be resolved. Does that make sense? Does it?
well,
You
there's
guys agree with
also
that, Patrick?
checking out is also a good thing from the planet. You know, there's times when we check out, like my husband and I always have at 6 o'clock, we've checked out of the planet.
Yeah, but
And
this
then
is
it's
different.
our
This is something else. That Patrick is.
And so then of course, we will binge watch a program. And there's that. So,
Yeah,
but
that can
the
be a
check,
good thing. That can be a
yeah,
good thing.
that
But
can be fun.
yeah,
But on the other hand, you know when to stop. That has to do with all addictions. If you're you're out with your family and there's not one person talking to anybody.
Patrick, does that answer your question?
It does. Yes, it does. It certainly provides an opportunity to be able to examine what may be called an avoidance or an addiction behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned drinking as I'm drinking wine, so perhaps I should
Where's mine?
the moment before.
Nothing
Well-
wrong with that. I got a friend who makes his own blueberry wine and it tasted so good with the lasagna tonight. Wow.
So if you're drinking it out of a glass, that's fine. If you're drinking it out of a paper bag, that's a pretty good indication.
That's another, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but you all get that, right? It's like if you know how you check out, then that's really a beautiful opportunity, because then you can see, well, what's making you want to check out? You know, just rewind a little bit and see, well, what just happened? And when it happened, how did I feel? How did I feel about that? And that can be a real good
Right.
pathway in a way to start that process of really coming face to face with what it is that's unresolved. Because, you know, when they talk about the shadow, it's really that part of you that you don't want to look at. You don't want to admit. So there's another good way, and towards the end, I'll give you another technique that really works very well. But there's one way that's pretty easy to do too, and that is to journal. If you write, but you write as though you are someone else, and you write in such a way that you allow that part of you that you're not aware of to speak. So you can write in terms of, like, if you were a criminal or if you were a psychopath. If somebody makes you mad, then you can write out what a criminally minded person would do to the person that you're mad at. right? And you kind of give yourself the leeway and just creative license to be as nasty as you can be. And of course, this is something that no one will see ever. In fact,
Ever.
when you're done, yeah, like ever,
You
right?
lose all your friends.
Well, it could be worse. It could be worse. They could send somebody for you, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of journaling, you want to destroy that is just as soon as you're done with it. And it takes a bit of courage, and you have to be maybe just a little bit crazy to do it. But that's the point, right? You want to get in touch with that part of you that's really disturbed, because it's very likely that part is alive and well inside. And what it needs is to be heard. So so it's
I find that, yeah.
it's
I find
like
that
a ruthless
interesting. I find that
honesty.
a great technique. And I did journal for a while, many, many years ago. And then I found I just didn't have time for it. That's my
What were
day
you
was-
avoiding?
Going to work, let's see, running a household, having people over almost every night.
Yeah, right. So you built an entire life around avoiding something. Shall we go into that and see what that is?
Yeah, having a good time. I was avoiding not having a good time doing a journal. Actually, it was a really good time for the rest of my life. I loved all the people I worked with, and
yeah, being busy is a great way to avoid the things that you don't want to deal with.
True.
Yeah.
And that's why in Zen training, Zen meditation, that's and these retreats that people go on, that 3 weeks of silence and being in meditation 10-12 hours a day.
Oh, that would be so nice.
Yeah, right. That's what that's designed to do. It's designed to let those things that are unresolved come up into consciousness. And people who've done that have described it's like a living hell. It can be like a living hell, because they're having to look at these things straight in the eye. It's not easy.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I get up early so I can sit and just look out at the birds eating in the bird bath and all the rest, and just that hour of silence before we enter the world of busyness. So, but we have tasks, and it's lovely. It's a lovely moment for me. But there's always, being busy. Yeah, I was a workaholic for 20 years. 40 hours a week was like a break. So, running a company and then starting the order. So, yeah.
We want to look at those times when we know that we're in an avoidance pattern, and then check to see what it was that sent us there. And if you're brave enough, you can actually be with that and see what it is, to see what that part of you is. And again, the opportunities arise when you're triggered by something. If something makes you angry, or if something makes you sad, or if something makes you lustful, or wanting to eat as much as you can, those kinds of involuntary actions that seems like somebody else is in the driver's seat at that time, in those times.
Yeah.
And you want to get to know that person. You want to invite them in, and it's like you want to sit down with them and say, well, tell me about yourself. I want to get to know you.
What you were talking about,
Patrick.
like wanting to eat and that sort of thing. Yeah, there's also can be a physical imbalance in what you're eating, not eating properly, because I'm rarely hungry. But I eat really balanced, organic, blah, blah. You've all heard my litany. So that really made a change for me in the last 10 years, 7 or 8, 10 years. of craving. I discovered that went away when I ate, when my body was nurtured.
Mm-hmm.
So I made it, and that made a big difference. When I was the workaholic me, I would go like you've done, Michael, is go to fast food places because I was going between 2 or 3 clients in a day in San Francisco. So I just zoom around, go through something and eat as I went from one client to the next. I put on a lot of weight, and there was an anxiety there on top of that. And so when I started consciously looking at what I was eating and my diet, I had to actually make time for that. I then started losing weight, and then I started completely, I mean, I could go, sometimes you'll see me, I'll be there, it's 3 o'clock, I'll be at the ranch and I haven't had lunch yet, and I had some minor, smoothie for breakfast. I'm not hungry. It's not there. And that has to do with the very bad, your body also tells you what you need.
Yeah. Patrick,
Yeah.
you were going to say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was wondering if, in fact, we're unable to discover these shadows, which perhaps are the essence of the readings. Are we capable of being Christian? By that I mean this: if we cannot discover the essence of our anger, which seems to be potentially the catalyst that engenders murder, are we truly following the precepts of Christ?
Yeah, that's a good question. What do you think? Patrick, what do you think?
That's all I had to say.
There we sit.
Yeah, because as long as you've got that kind of conflict going on inside, you can't really be alive. You're not fully functioning. Would you agree?
I would. I mean, I've been lost in some of these avoidance much of my life, and I'm sure they're some sort of, like I've read recently, an imprisonment, kind of an obstacle towards a clearer spiritual path. Perhaps that's why Woody Allen was always seemingly, at least in his movies, at the therapist's couch. This is marvelous. The reading, I've never really read beyond the Beatitudes themselves. I mean, the essence of the distinction that is drawn here between the legal commandments, the law, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not be angry, thou shalt not divorce, thou shalt make a commitment. The spiritual quality of this reading is phenomenal. I mean, thank you for bringing it to my attention. I found it marvelous. I mean, it was just beautiful.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say it's very irritating.
No, because,
Don't do this. Don't do that. Well, what the hell can I do, right?
I always have a particular visual image that goes with the line you gave us tonight about do not resist evil, do not resist evildoers.
Yeah.
It's I don't even know which kind of a martial art it is, of the many different varieties. But basically, when your opponent comes at you, your attacker, instead of trying to resist them, that line about what you resist persists,
Right.
basically engage in the battle. You wait until the last possible moment, and then you gracefully get out of their way and let them just run that way. You know what I mean? They essentially get themselves in trouble because you have removed yourself from their path of attack. It's a
Right.
very lovely way to deal with anger or aggression coming at you, is to not answer it in kind, but let it just spend itself that way. I don't
Right.
know how exactly to describe it, but that's my picture of that particular.
In
Yeah.
that incident, I'm reminded of an incident where the person appeared to be my friend and ended up to be anything but. And they came at me at one point, and I realized, kind of where she was coming from. I knew where she was coming from, and just suddenly I felt the presence of Jesus just loving her and understanding that she didn't understand me, but it didn't matter. And it just that fight just kind of ended right there. But I just felt that presence of love just overtaking everything, and I kind of felt sorry for her. But I understood where she, it was, she was not my friend, but not to deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
And
So that, that's interesting, Linda, because, that, and Polly, when that person comes at you, that's like an external demonstration of what's going on inside you. Not necessarily in that particular moment, but that's how it happens when we're dealing with something that we don't want to look at within ourselves. It kind of comes at us like that sometimes.
okay.
And I'm not sure how to approach this, but there is a way of, we have to take the energy, let's put it this way. We have to take the energy of that and we have to consume it. We have to eat it. And this is part of the integration process. And Jesus actually talked about this in the Gospel of Thomas. He said, let's see if I can find that. It says, lucky is the lion that the human will eat, so that the lion becomes human. And foul is the human that the lion will eat, and the lion still will become human. And what is the lion is that thing coming at you from inside, that thing that you don't want to look at. And if you avoid it, if you use an avoidance coping mechanism or an addiction to, as that avoidance mechanism, then essentially the lion's eating you. And it will become you after a while. And the lion also symbolizes your passions, right? The lower nature, the intellectual instinctual part of us that can be quite vicious. So the idea is to take that energy, and we have to bring this more into something specific. It's like one of the things that's going on right now is dealing with racism. And we're all called to really examine ourselves to see, where we just implicitly racist in ways that we're not even aware of. And one way to deal with that is to admit to yourself that, yeah, I'm racist, that I have racist tendencies in me. And by doing that, it's a way of you not only owning it, but it's a way to take that energy of that and to consume it. And it's kind of, it's like coming to grips with it. It's getting into a place where you can be okay with that. And I know how that sounds. It sounds horrible. But anytime you deal with these kinds of internal forces, it's going to sound horrible. And so you have to go into those horrible parts of yourself and make peace with it. And making peace with it means you have to let it be. You have to actually give it space and room to maneuver, because that's what keeps it alive, is being hemmed in. So by it's not just allowing it, it's like you have to kind of step into it and take it on and see what that feels like and let it integrate with you as a conscious human being. And it doesn't mean that you have to act it out, but it does mean you have to own it. And the same goes with any other thing like anger, or when people do some things that really piss you off, you have to get to that energy of that and consume it. Let me tell you a story about an incident that happened with me that and how I dealt with it. There was a time in my life where my work has always required that I drive a lot, and one of the things that would really bother me would be when people cut in line. If there was a construction going on in the highway in front of us, and there was a 4-lane highway, 2 lanes going towards it, and people would just automatically move over to the right lane and wait, but there'd always be somebody or quite a few people who would just cut around and then dive in at the very last minute. And this was a long time ago, but it made me think to myself, this is why I don't have a gun in the glove compartment. Because
you'd use it. Yeah.
I didn't trust myself to not use it, right? Because that's how crazy it would make me. It would because it was so unjust and so not right and so inconsiderate and blah blah blah. And so one day I'm in that situation, long line of cars, and I see somebody coming up. So I'm going to play the cop, and I pull over halfway into that lane, and while still maintaining my position in the line of cars. And I thought, well, this is going to stop this guy. And he pulled off of the road entirely and drove on the median to get around me.
To get around you, of course.
But that wasn't the part.
You were being a control freak,
Yeah. And that was.
There are liner uppers and there are side zoomers, and there just are, and there always will be.
And do you realize on Route 30? Okay, I'll let you finish your story, but when
Please.
Yeah, finish, and
I
then
don't
I'll
want to lose my train of thought.
That was resolved on
Okay.
Route 37.
So that, the fact that he drove around me wasn't the main. That's not what really pushed me over the edge. It was the look on his face, which was it was entirely devoid of shame or remorse or like he was doing something wrong. He had such an impassive look on his face, like this was something he did every day.
Of course.
And that made me truly homicidal. So
Yes.
the next thing is that I figured, I had a brief moment of consciousness, and I thought, this has really gone too far. I'm going to have to do something about this because I'm either going to kill somebody or somebody's going to kill me, and nothing's going to work out right. So it came to me in a flash. What I did was I pulled out of my lane and did the very thing that I hated so much. I just calmly drove up to the head of the line, found a spot to merge in, and I did. And so I did the thing that I hated. I did the thing that I was judging so fiercely. And you know what happened? All of that pressure, all of that tension inside of me disappeared in an instant.
Interesting.
And from that day onward, I not only could do that and not feel bad about it, but also if I was in line and I saw somebody coming up, I would slow down and let them in. And that was that was so totally different. And so later, and this is months or years later, I read an article that talked about what they call late merging, which is what that is.
Yeah, the side zoomers, right?
Yeah. And they did a scientific study on it, and they found that when people practiced late merging, that the efficiency of the traffic flow increased by about 20%.
Closer to 32%.
So it actually works better when
It
people
does.
do that.
Okay, on 37 where you live, you get off 37 onto 121. They
Yeah.
changed the lanes because they had 2 lanes, and then you exit from the left side in order to make a left turn onto 37. So they changed it so you had 2 lanes right up past the red light.
Yeah.
And they increased the efficiency by 32%.
Yeah, there you go.
So all those people that were passing were actually getting everybody there faster.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like it. Yeah,
It
you have
depends
to
on where
deal
you're
with.
from. Okay, now I am married to a man who was born and raised in Germany, and his parents are Persians. You ought to try driving with them. Okay, so you're going across the Golden Gate Bridge, and he centers the car on the line between the two
Ooh,
because he hasn't made up his mind which lane he wants to be in.
Laney.
So he'll drive up on, as far as they're concerned in Iran, the red light is a suggestion. Yellow light means
Yeah,
hurry
exactly.
up. Okay? So depending on what part of the planet you've grown up on, it does, you
The
know,
rules
so
are
what
different.
Michael's going
Yeah.
through had to do with where he grew up. But you wouldn't get anywhere in Iran. You'd be sitting by the side of the road for the rest of your life.
On the other hand, if you tried that trick in Britain, where they know about
Oh, God.
lines, or they
Yeah,
call
they're
them
so anal.
queues. Oh my word! Do not jump the
Oh, God.
queue. That's like a mortal
Right,
sin.
the other
It's
extreme.
horrible.
Then also,
It's very culturally dependent. That's
so you go
true.
to Italy or anywhere on the Autobahn, and if you ride slowly in the left lane, you're dead. If
Yeah.
you do not get in the left lane unless you pass, which is a very un-American thing. People get in the left, I call them lefties. They get in the left lane and they cruise either the speed limit or a little better. Okay, on the Autobahn, there is no speed limit. So this is all throughout Europe. There's no speed limit on the Autobahn. You can go 150 if you want. So if you, like in Italy, if you have an accident, usually you're dead because these guys are going so fast. And that's what happens. But on the other hand, they're very safe. And if you drive if you drive around someone and don't pull over to the right lane and there's someone behind you, he'll come right up on you. And when you go to pull over, he will pull over and just about miss your car by 4 or 5 inches to let you know that you did something wrong. And I drive around here in California and people just cruise in the left lane. Oh, and they do it in Texas because my sister picked up on it. She says in Texas it's the same way. And it's considered extremely rude in Europe. You just wouldn't do it. So
I have another solution to your side zoomer problem, Michael.
Yeah.
The years that I commuted to seminary, I drove every day from the peninsula to Berkeley. It's an hour. And then I turned around at the end, and I was always going with the commute traffic, right? Well, no, I was going against the traffic, but at commute hours. And I discovered after just a few weeks that I would arrive at school in an internal rage because the way people drive around here when they're going to work, oh, here, let me cut you off and take your spot in the lane. I mean, they're rude, okay, by my definition. And I realized that it was not helping me at all. And so I developed what I came to call Zen driving, in which when you're out there with all this traffic and people doing all these awful things, you basically do everything you can to help them. So if they need to cut you off, you say, oh, please, you must be in a hurry. Here, have my spot. I hope you have a better day. Now you have to mean it. If you do it sarcastically, it doesn't count.
You have to.
But if you
That's very-
seriously mean it,
Yeah. I always
you
figured the
stay
guy.
calm and everything is fine. But that was a self-defense
Wife is in the
mechanism.
backseat pregnant, having her child. I give him that. That's what I give him. I go, okay, see the guy zipping in and out of traffic? I call that,
Yeah,
he's definitely got a pregnant.
must be,
wife.
yeah, something's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm giving him a lot of space, and that's fine. Right.
Yep.
So,
And
so
then
the
the
There
guy-
are an awful lot of pregnant women in back seats out there, I gotta
Yeah.
tell you, but.
And the guy coming up and tailgating me when both lanes on either side of me are empty and they could easily pass left or right.
I know.
And then I pull over and then he immediately goes up and tailgates somebody else.
Yep, because
And we're
that's how they
talking less
drive.
than less than a car distance.
So the upshot of this, the upshot of what we're talking about is what to do when confronted with this beast inside. And what we have to consider doing is eating that beast, and so that we incorporate it, right? The same as when we eat food. We take that energy and we consume it. We have to give ourselves permission and leeway to be that, because by definition, it's that part of us that we don't want to admit, we don't want to allow to live in us. We have to allow it to live in us. And by doing that, there's an amazing kind of alchemy that takes place, that when you eat the lion, you derive the strength of the lion. The strength behind that becomes your strength. And if you've ever resolved something of this nature within yourself by really accepting it and letting it into your being, like come into you, you will find that the next day you will have more energy than you've had in a long time.
Wow.
Because these kinds of things, they suck up a lot of energy in the background. Just like on your computer, if you have too many programs running, slows your the speed of your processor way down. So these unresolved parts of you, of us, that are very much open and running in the background, they are taking a lot of your vitality. So it's entirely in your best interest to deal with these things. And
But Michael, you were coming from a point of view of self-righteousness on the road. You were self-righteous. Man, I'm polite, I'm this, and those people are rats.
yeah, I'm not so sure.
That kills everything. So if you get into the same position that they're in, because you have no idea what goes through other people's heads.
That's true.
No idea. It was just bizarre.
Well, what was going through their heads wasn't the issue. It was what was going on in my head. And
exactly, but you were responding to that.
And I think self-righteousness would be kind of a superficial analysis of that, because there was something going on there. And it's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because we don't have to know. We don't have to be a psychoanalyst to deal with these things, because it's not a conceptual thing that we're dealing with. It's an energetic thing. And it's really, it's not like we have to accept the idea or the concept. We have to accept the energy. And that's a feeling. That's whatever it is. If it's great.
I'm right. That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
You wanted to be right. And then you realize there is no right. And then you could let go of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That doesn't really ring a bell with me. I mean, that's not, it's, I'm sharing this as an inner process, just as an example, not as an invitation to be psychoanalyzed.
No, what I'm saying is that's something, though, that we face when we're working with people, or some religions that are very rigid, or people that are in very rigid situations, because they feel that is the only way to go. Whereas the world is populated with how many millions of people who have all managed to get through life and live and put a roof over their heads and eat and lived an incredibly different way than we have, even in America. And so when you see something that you go, oh, that behavior is blah, blah, take a look at it. That's all. Maybe there's a reason for the way they are that's positive.
Yeah, well, we want to look at this in terms of what's going on within ourselves, and this is
Well, there's that. And what's going on inside yourself is
because whatever we see out there that's
Criticize.
bothering us, you know, like in my situation with the late merging people, something was definitely bothering me, and when, but the way out of that, the way back to sanity and consciousness was the actual doing of the thing that I didn't like. Now,
yes.
That's an
you
interesting
can think,
strategy.
well,
Yeah, it is an
bank
interesting
robbers-
strategy.
yeah, let me finish. If you can say, well, bank robbers really bother me, I really hate it when people rob banks. Doesn't mean that I'm going to go rob a bank, right? Because then if I do that, then I'm going to have a lot of time to think about it, when I'm in jail. So
The thing, what the operative word is there, Michael? The operative word is the term hate. That's what's getting you in trouble.
yeah,
Because
you're right.
robbing is not right.
Yeah.
But you don't have to get emotional about it.
Yeah.
You just have to see
Well,
it and fix
Yeah,
it.
you can say you don't have to get emotional about it, but if you hate something, you are going to get emotional about it. And
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That was the operative word, hate.
so it.
I'm going to have to go, you guys.
All
It's
right,
been
bye.
lovely. See you next week. Thanks a lot, Michael.
And you don't get to listen to me anymore giving you a hard time, Michael. But I no, it's true. You can back off and not be. Yeah, Christy and I have an appointment. So
All right.
love you all. Miss
Right,
you.
take care.
Let's do this next week.
Take care.
This was very good, Michael, because it was a very different way of looking at things.
Mm.
In the work before, it was like I would look at things as, in my garden. Okay, what are the weeds in my garden? What are the things I see that I don't like or aren't working? And then sit and ask for help and feel it come forward. And as soon as I felt the burst of what it was allowing it to let go. I wasn't suppressing it. I knew more about myself. But while you're talking about this, I'm going, there's things I didn't even know to touch because I could feel them. When you're talking about journaling and
Right.
going, oh, look at, I've held on to this all my life. A way of, using television or now the phone, to be entertained rather than, sit and look at stuff and get things done. Very powerful class, very powerful.
Mhm.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Again. But just one thing I had, this was such an interesting experience because it was kind of the opposite of what you were talking about. My friend and I were driving in the car, and I'm an Aries and I can be, and she was always a controlling person. I don't tend to be controlling, but I do speak my mind. And so we were driving down the street and I said something, she was telling me, turn here, do this, go there. And I kind of, pushed back at her. And she said, stop telling me what to do. And I turned around to her, I said, just like you're doing to me. And it was a revelation to her because this wasn't the part of her that she recognized.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, here I am, here we are looking at ourselves.
Yeah.
And you know, a barrier came down. It was very interesting.
It's amazing the power of seeing.
Mm,
Isn't it? I mean, just seeing it,
yeah.
these unconscious things is enough to, it's like what Carl Jung said, the idea is to make the unconscious conscious. And so when you
Yes.
see it, sometimes that's all it takes. That's
Yeah.
all it takes. And it's not a conceptual thing. It's not understanding or analyzing, because analyzing can be like a rabbit hole. The more you analyze, the more you find there is to analyze. And it's like when you meet somebody, say for the first time, you really see them, you really make a connection. You're not analyzing them. You're not presenting them with ideas. There's an energy flow. There's a movement of spirit between you and that other person, and it's like a bond. And once that happens, so everything is resolved in that moment. It's like there's nothing hidden.
Mm, that's great. Because in the past, when I would do some of this work, it was, well, why? And my teacher at the time had said, it doesn't matter why, because that is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
He said, no, it's just connecting with it and allowing it to come forward, which is part of teaching, teaching me about myself.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
also making that deeper and that energetic connection.
Yeah.
And we do become bigger because that is gone. That energy ball of God abhors a vacuum.
So how is this class for everybody? Everybody okay?
Hi, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's good.
Very good.
Good.
They're all great
I enjoyed it.
to me anyway. There's always something to learn and grow with, things that we wouldn't have seen ourselves.
Yeah. Well, this,
And
I
it's
chose
funny, we learn our lessons each individually, but when we get together and find out we're all learning the same lessons, it helps it grow even more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, good
This
point.
is a real crucial teaching of Jesus, this resist not evil. It's universal. It was around before he spoke those words, and it's been around ever since. And it's something that, as mystics and sages and seers throughout the millennia have known the reality and the truth of this, but we forget about it, right? We forget these deeper wisdom teachings. And so
Well,
I
they're
would
not brought out as much in everyday life. Like I think we saw more of it when we were in the order, but I don't see it being shown to kids now, and people are getting angry over the stupidest stuff anymore, and over nothing, and they just get angrier and angrier, and they're not dealing with it at all.
right.
And,
Yeah. So it's this constant projection onto the other that drives the the violence and the animosity in the world. So
right.
if we can resolve these things within ourselves, and we become like centers of peace in the world, because we're not bothered by these things. And even from a strategic and an academic point, even we're adding to the world's wisdom, because we have the ability then to be objective. And that's another, I keep thinking about your question, Patrick, and it's like when we are catapulted into a polarized point of view, then we can be sure that we've got something going on, because it's when we have those unresolved parts of us taken care of, we don't get launched into these extreme positions. We have the ability to be objective, and also to think critically. to analyze situations more from a truly balanced position. And it's people like that who are able to, they're the problem solvers, because they're not vested in defending their position. They have the ability to see what's actually going on, and they have the ability to change their minds, or to be convinced or influenced, or at least to consider an opposing viewpoint. And, and they're able to do that without having to feel like they have to take it on as their own. But they can actually consider something that they may not agree with, but really consider it and not just defend against it. So,
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm finding myself more and more in speaking, just because, you know, politics are the main thing today. You know, you can't help but bring it up a little bit once in a while. And I have a lady down the road that's a strong anti-Trump, and I'm stuck in between. But we were able to carry on a conversation without getting hostile with each other. And she brought up some very interesting situations that, you know, I had to look at, and I could be comfortable in looking at them objectively. And
yeah,
it didn't necessarily used to be that way.
right.
It was my way or the highway.
Yeah, exactly. My way or the highway, right?
Yeah. And my way didn't work.
Okay, well, I think we should bring this to a close. Let me just say, for those of you watching this video online, be sure to check out the links to my website in the description below, The Mystical Christ at mysticalchrist.org. There you'll find lots of useful information on how to develop your inner mystic. If you found this video valuable, please be sure to subscribe and click on the like button, and also the notification bell, so that you can receive new videos as they're published. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for participating, and I'll get this,
Thank you, Michael.
I'll get
Thank
this
you, Michael.
online, so if you want to.
Another good discussion.
Yes, this was marvelous. Thank you,
Yeah,
Michael.
yeah,
You bet.
well, that's
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Maybe next time we'll see each other.
Yes.
See more of you.
Okay.
All right. Have a
Take
good
care,
week.
everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
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 thank you, thank you, thank you.